Sonic the Hedgehog. This spiky blue prick is one of my favorite game characters of all time. If you watched my previous video about Sonic Heroes, you'll know just how much I love this guy and his games. But see, in the late 2000s and throughout most of the 2010s, Sonic was seen as a laughingstock in the games industry. This was due to many subpar releases. Trust me though, I'm not here to milk that horse any more than it needs to be. Sonic having a rough transition to 3D will not be brought up here at all. Because you see, many of the worst Sonic games are games I generally still find enjoyment in. Sonic 06 is a buggy mess with an awful story, but there's potential, and just going through the levels on their own isn't the worst thing. But I digress. My patron Whirly asked me what my least favorite Sonic game is, and in all my time around Sonic circles online, I don't think I've heard anyone share the same opinion. There's a lot of stuff wrong with Sonic Lost World. The timing of its release, having come right after the critically acclaimed Sonic Generations, the general aesthetic, the bland music, uninspired story, and having some of the weakest villains in the entire series. But these issues above aren't even why Lost World is my least favorite. I have so many problems with Sonic Lost World. I don't even know where to start. I guess we can... Oh. Hold on. Oh, this is embarrassing. See, this is actually Sonic Lost World on Wii U, which I don't actually hate all that much. It's got its issues, like I mentioned earlier, but overall, I find the experience to be decent. What we're talking about today is the Nintendo 3DS version, developed by Dimps and released the same day as the console version. Dimps is no stranger to handheld Sonic games. The developers worked on Sonic Pocket Adventure, Advance, Rush. Sure, they've released their fair share of subpar games. Their prior release, Generations on 3DS, is truly one of Sonic's most boring titles. But regardless, Dimps has goodwill with the Sonic fanbase. So naturally, this version of the game had a fair amount of people excited. Okay, I'll cut the shit. The 3DS version of Lost World is absolutely the worst Sonic game I've ever played. And my first point is because of how good it starts. The first world gives such a good impression, especially with the 3D levels. They're short, sweet, and to the point. Run around, use some parkour, explore the levels for alternate routes. If the entire game kept up this momentum, I wouldn't be complaining at all. But the game almost immediately nosedives. Not only do you get a taste for the absolute mediocrity that are the 2D levels at the end of Windy Hill, but the very next world, Desert Ruins, immediately present every single issue I have with the game. The level design immediately gets confusing, and suddenly now, obstacles meant to solely waste your time are constantly incorporated. These fucking sandworms, no matter what I do, I can never seem to consistently attack these guys. Homing attack, you get hit. Use the kick move, nothing happens. It feels like blind luck to get these damn enemies to die, and most of the time, level progression is locked behind taking these enemies out. Aside from that and level length suddenly getting way longer, we're not even at the worst of it. Tropical Coast is when we get to a point where all the joy has been sucked out of me, and at this point, there's nothing redeemable about Sonic Lost World on the 3DS. With levels taking nearly half an hour to beat, mechanics that don't properly explain themselves, mandatory gyro-controlled Wisp segments, on top of other issues that Lost World as a whole already suffers from, like the unoriginality in the level themes and the music, the bland boss battles. God, would you believe me if I said it got worse? Frozen Factory has levels that can take up to 40 minutes to beat, on top of constantly having to deal with trial and error level design. And ice physics! Silent Forest doubles down on locking level progression by forcing you to defeat all the enemies in an area, as well as truly awful mandatory Wisp segments. And constant rail grinding over bottomless pits. The absolutely dreadful pop-in doesn't make it any easier either. Real quick, let's talk about that. This is a really bad looking game. Look, the 3DS is one of my favorite systems of all time, but I won't lie, a lot of its software has not aged the best. It's especially noticeable if you're playing on XL models. Lots of games have really jaggy low poly looks to them, and it's not that charming. I think Lost World is a shining example of this. Super Mario 3D Land looks better. Skyroad is fucking nothing, mashing level aesthetics from prior zones. It's so boring and I just want to put the game down. Lava Mountain is literally just a boss rush. Fight the Deadly Six for a second time. I know you were really itching to fight Xena again. Then to the final boss, which honestly, you could put this guy as the first boss in any other Sonic game and it wouldn't feel out of place. That's how easy and predictable he is. Minus that weird insta-kill move he pulls out of nowhere. But hey, it's still better than the Time Eater. We're almost done here, but let me talk about Super Sonic real quick. This was that weird era of Sonic games where Sega didn't give Super Sonic any plot relevancy. You can beat the entire game without him, but he can still be unlocked and played as. In the Wii U version, you have to collect all the red rings in every single level to play as him, but at that point, you've already gone through every level and thoroughly explored them, so pointless. The 3DS version plays things a little more traditionally. Collect 50 rings in any stage to be granted access to the special stage. Now, real quick, I need to apologize to Sonic Heroes, which I previously said were some of the worst special stages in the entire series, because Sonic Lost World 3DS has some of the most unfun special stages I've ever played. Floating around this empty void, you have to collect colored orbs within a strict time limit to get access to the emeralds. It doesn't look that bad, right? The problem? The entire stage is controlled with gyro. You have to twist and turn all around just to get Sonic to go where you want him to. It's not intuitive, it's slow and clunky. At least you can unlock Super Sonic pretty early on, but that doesn't make the game any better. The constant bottomless pits plus Super Sonic's increased speed doesn't make it any easier. Sonic Lost World in the 3DS is my least favorite Sonic game. It sucks shit, dude. And it would be the last Sonic game Dimps would develop. Now they seem to work exclusively with Bandai on Dragon Ball games and such. The game had a lot of potential. It was Sonic's first 3D outing on a dedicated handheld device. Those first few levels really show how good this game could have been. And who knows if Dimps is to blame, or if Sega and Sonic Team had some influence in there too. But honestly, this version of the game doesn't matter. It's a handheld version of a console game. When conversation comes up about Sonic Lost World, people will talk about the Wii U version. The 3DS version is just slightly worse, so it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to be talking about this anyway. There's a lot of stuff wrong with Sonic Lost World, and a lot of stuff worth talking about. But everything about the 3DS version was manufactured specifically to piss me off. You know, thinking about it, it's a shame that the 3DS didn't have any good Sonic games. That's really sad. And now that that era of gaming is over, I don't really know how to feel about this. I think I just bummed myself out. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I want to give a super special shout out to all of my patrons, including Whirly, rosedotmov, Gloomy, and RelentlessKaijuFan. Thank you so much for supporting the channel.
He's always been fast. Very fast. But now Sonic's got some smoking new moves, and he'll need